Listen, bro, ito yung character, ganito pagka-sulat. Yahweh sa ilan, Yah, Y, H, W, tapos Shen, tapos I, Yahweh Shai.
Okay, I want to start off by saying all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rakah, Quadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone pushing this word in truth and sincerity. And shalom to the men and women hoping to be the children of Israel, delivered in the day of the Lord. So before I get into it, I want to apologize. It's been about 2 weeks since I managed to put a video out. And, it's not through lack of understanding or having ideas of what to do. It's just pretty much, I could describe it in saying that, these left-hand spirits out here are pretty much stepping up their game. I mean, when I came to this truth, you'd notice strange things started to happen and things start to increase. I mean, my wife, who has nothing to do with this truth, who doesn't want to listen, I tried to tell her, but she doesn't want to listen about anything to do with it at all. But even she herself, after being in this truth for about 2 years, she said to me, since you started reading that Bible, everything goes wrong. And so that's okay. That's like, obviously, once you come to these scriptures, you learn why that's happening and what it's all about. But what I've obviously also noticed is since I started to do these videos, it started to increase to another level. And obviously over the last 2 weeks, it's increased again. But it's fine, just have to make adjustments and keep it moving. When I started to do these videos, I mean, there's guys out here that are doing videos every day. But when I first started to do the videos in January, it's only been about 4 or 5 months, I figured I'd probably just do maybe 2 a week, just to pace myself, 2 or 3 a week. But, like I say, the left-hand spirits, they start to step up their game, and I've just about been coping with one. And again, it's not down to, being able to put the video together. I mean, it's quite easy to draw the precepts, the information, and put it on a plate. But obviously, it's circumstances is always applicable to whatever's going on. So you have to then ride with those circumstances around you. And end of the day, everything's on the Lord's timing. But as we can see here, 1 Peter 4:12, Beloved, think not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happen unto you. But rejoice insomuch as ye are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that, when his glory shall be revealed, ye may be glad also with exceeding joy. So let's get on with the lesson. Let's just move on from there and let's break it down. So today I'm going to talk about a video called Crime and COVID in London's Little India. Well, I'm not going to talk about this video in particular. I will put the link up in my description box. But I'm going to talk about a topic related to this video. And the reason for that is on Apostle Tahar's channel. Last week, he put up a video regarding that same video. He put the link up to it too on his channel. And he spoke on it for about 5 minutes. And in his video, he mentioned that he believes the people of the Punjab are the descendants of Jacob, Israelites, if you like. So with that, I'm going to go into that subject right now. This is what I'm going to talk about. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I am somebody who was told my whole life, you're from the Punjab, that's where your family come from. I don't speak the language, I don't follow the culture. I've grown up with a Western mentality rather than a mentality of somebody from the Punjab. However, that's what I was told, that's where I'm from. But obviously coming to this truth, I now know different. I now know that I'm a Jew. I mean, I didn't, and there's people out there that like to argue, oh, Israelites are black only, they're black Hebrew Israelites. Well, I'm not black. And, before you start to then try to break down how I came to this truth and what makes me think I'm an Israelite, because obviously I don't fit that agenda that that particular person might be pushing. Well, I came to this truth via a spiritual intervention, if you like. So with that, I've been told via spirit that I am a Jew, and that's my proof. That's all I need. And that's what it says. The Bible says that our spirits will bear witness. So from that, I've taken to this book, and I've tried to eat and fill myself up as much as I can and eat the whole roll. So that's the main reason why I'm going to pick on this topic. And I'm also going to pick on this topic because being of somebody of being somebody who looks like an Elamite, somebody who used to call myself Sikh, but is now an Israelite. Obviously, I know people of the same look and the same history, if you like. So with those people, I've introduced them to the channel. Some of them watch these videos. So for their sake, I'm going to bring out this information just to help them, obviously, because it's difficult, when you, end of the day, you wake up, you look at yourself in the mirror and you think, well, I'm supposed to be part of this nation of people which are living over in Babylon the Great, but you don't look like them. So obviously it does throw doubt. This is the flesh versus the spirit. But obviously this is why you need this information, just to help you kind of understand what's actually going on. So, also, what people have to realize as well, when I came to this truth, I was 38 years old. And I spent 38 years telling people I'm of a particular nationality. They say, well, where are you from? I'd say India. And they'd say, well, what religion are you? And I'd say, well, I'm born into the Sikh faith, but I don't really follow it. Well, one day, when you think about it, this spiritual intervention took place. And the next morning I woke up and I automatically have to tell people, because I now know the truth, I have to tell people, look, I'm not Indian, I'm a Jew. Stop calling me Indian. And through the spirit, the situation kept arising. And you don't just do that for nothing, There are people that I had known at that point for 20 years, 25 years. Some people, I was married for 11 years at that point. So you have to understand, for a 38-year-old to wake up and all of a sudden tell everybody around him, look, stop referring to me as this particular person or this particular nationality. I'm now this other nationality. Who else do you know that does that? And you don't just do that off of the back of bumping into somebody and hearing 2 or 3 precepts. It takes a lot more than that. It takes the Spirit to show you, and that's what the Spirit did. So, and that's what it does. It continues to do. So those people that then say, well, Hebrew Israelites are black only, and then they look at me and get confused. Well, it's on you. You need to get into this truth more and find out what's really going on, because obviously it's not with you. The Spirit's not with you. So moving on now. So in this video, you're going to see a speech by a guy called Enoch Powell. And Enoch Powell was a politician between 1950 and 1974 in the UK. And he pretty much, I'll let you go and watch the video, but you'll see a speech in there. And he made this speech pretty much against the immigration policy of the UK, because the UK in the 50s let in a lot of Caribbean people through the immigration policy, which was, as we know, they're Israelites. And in the 60s and 70s, they let in a lot of Asians, a lot of Punjabi people, a lot of Indians, whichever way you like to refer to them as, they let them into the country. And so a lot of Edomites were getting upset. And Enoch Powell, being a politician, made the speech that he made against the immigration policy. And as you can see here, it caused a lot of uproar with the British people. And a lot of people backed him. And if you're in the UK and you're an Israelite and you grew up in the 80s and 90s and even the 70s, 80s and 90s, and you were getting hit up with racism and a lot of this go back home talk, it was pretty much stems from Enoch Powell's speech. Because obviously before that, they didn't really have this particular problem of Israelites being brought over here And so when it started to happen, Enoch Powell jumped on the boat and made a scene of it, sort of caused these guys to become upset, and showed them a picture of a problem coming towards them. They didn't like it. So obviously these guys were doing a lot of the racial aggressive behaviour, the racial crime in those particular times, and their sons. So even if you go over to Southall, you will see images. There were images in Southall like this: no more Asians in Southall, basically. People protesting to back Enoch Powell. And again, these Asians are suffering the same treatment as these West Indians from coming over. Now, we know, like I said before, we know the West Indians are Israelites. And now we want to work out if the Punjabi people are Israelites. And the reason is because they're suffering the same affliction as the West Indian Israelites, if you like. So, the curses are set upon Jake. So if you see one set of people going through the same problem as another set of people, they're probably both Jakes. And this is what it is. This is what we're going to go into today. But as we can see here, the restored remnant, Isaiah 11:11, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam, which is India, and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. 11 and 12, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. So this is going into end time prophecy, and as you can see, Israelites will be gathered from Elam in amongst other places, all around the earth. But Elam is one of them, and this is what I'm trying to show you. And these guys came from Elam, mixed in. Well, they originally come from Israel, the seed of Jacob, but they've come via Elam. So, and as we can see here, 11 and 13, this is also, going into the problems between the tribes of Israel, Ephraim and Judah, not getting along with each other. And obviously, once the Lord comes back and everything is healed and everything is sorted and the nation is set up again in the proper manner and fashion, these things like envy and vexation will disappear from between these tribes. And like I say, the consequences of disobedience, Deuteronomy chapter 28. I mean, you know this yourself. You should know these curses quite well. And these explain that the Israelites will be scattered abroad. And, if you're not sure, like I say, you can just look at a group of people and look at chapter 28 and run down through the curses, see if they match the curses. Obviously, it's quite obvious that the people, the Israelites over there in America, Babylon the Great, in the West Indies and South America have been taken over by slave ships. We know that. We know the history is quite clear. But, with other groups of people, sometimes you have to dig a little bit deeper and work out, did these guys really come on a slave ship? And sometimes you've got to go through the curses and look at the problems they go through to really work out whether they're Israelite or not, whether they're of the seed. I mean, for me, for my example, when I came to this truth, and again, you're looking in the mirror and you're thinking to yourself, well, these guys keep saying I'm this, and does that make sense? I don't really look like them. And then you read through this chapter and then you apply it to your life, and then all of a sudden you will realize that these curses are upon you and within your life. And that's why you've had certain struggles with your life before you came to the truth, but you could never understand them. I mean, without trying to sound rude, you can pretty much look at this chapter and look at the curses, the consequences of disobedience, and you could call them a list of black man problems. And when I first looked at it, that's what I summed it up in my head as. I said, well, these are black man problems, but I have these same problems. And this was a pretty much a big nail in the coffin to say, yep, do you know what, this is it. This has got to be this is right. Because how can this book be written thousands of years ago, and the Spirit comes along, tells me to go and read it? I've got these prophets in Babylon the Great preaching his word, and then I go to this chapter, I read through it, and you think to yourself, well, this is written about the things that are going on in my life, and then that's how you know it's connected to you. Now, another thing about the Punjabi people, we're going to go into the area real quickly just to get a brief understanding. We're going to work our way backwards to find out who they are. So when you go to the land of Punjab, if you were to look it up today on Google, they would say to you, well, you know, there's Muslims, Sikhs and Hindus living in the Punjab. And that is true on surface level. But prior to that, there were only the Sikh people living there. Now, this particular partition, was created by the Elamites. As we can see here, the Greater Punjab region was annexed by the British East India Company from the Sikh Empire in 1849. Okay, following widespread religious violence in 1947, the Punjab province of British India was divided along the religious lines into West Punjab and East Punjab. The West Punjab became part of a Muslim majority Pakistan, while the East Punjab became part of a Hindu majority India. So this is what's happened. The Elamites have gone in there, ruled the empire for a certain amount of time, and when too much uproar, and after a while they've said, okay, we're going to leave, but we're going to divide up the land. And that's, as you probably heard of, divide and conquer. And that's what they've done. They've divided up this land and pretty much conquered it by leaving, getting on with their business, but leaving these people here to keep fighting over the land. And that's all they've been doing ever since. So like I say, when you look up today, they will say to you, Punjabi people were made up of 3 different religions. But initially, prior to that, prior to 1849, you can see that it was a Sikh empire. So those are the people initially there originally. Now, again, if you look at a map of India and you ask yourself, well, why did they mess up? They messed up this one particular tiny little spot over the rest of the whole country. They could have messed up anything in that whole country, but they went to this particular tiny little spot. Because again, it goes back to the curses. Edomites are going to do what they can to Jake, wherever Jake is, and they will find them and they will dig them out and they will make a problem for them in this particular kingdom. So, you can find yourself in a little place, secluded, far away from Europe, and they'll find you and they'll cause you a problem and then they'll leave. Even if you got, like I say, even if you got one tiny little spot in the whole country, they'll come and find you. So what we're going to do now we've discovered that, the Punjab region was actually originally the Sikh people. We're going to go backwards again and find out more about these Sikh people. So what you have to understand, you see, this is quite common knowledge within the Sikh community, is that Sikhs call themselves Jats. And as you can see here, originally pastoralists in the lower Indus River valley of Sindh, Jats migrated north into the Punjab region in late medieval times and subsequently into Delhi territory, northeastern Rajputana and western Gangetic Plain in the 17th and 18th centuries. So pastoralists are people who practice pastoralism as a livelihood system, pretty much living off livestock production system that involves tracking and use of grazing, and a farmer basically is pretty much a fancy way of saying a farmer, and that's what these people were. Jats were farmers, and this is where the Sikh people came from. They came from the Jats, and as we can see here, originally in the lower Indus River Valley of Sindh. So when you look at the when you look at the Siddhi people, and you look up the Siddhi, I think I pronounced that right, who come from the Sindh area, what do they look like? They look like Jake, but they also look like Sikhs. So this is an image of these people that came from this particular area. Now, when you look them up today, the Siddhis, what do they look like? They look like Jake. There's no confusion here. No confusion of face at the minute. I mean, there is in other places, but there's still a community, still looking true to their roots, there to this day. And here's another person here, and this shows you quite clearly, what they're doing. This is Jake. This is the woolly hair, and then this is the Hindu culture with the dot on her forehead. So clearly going off, clearly sun worshipping, which is exactly what Jake's doing in America, Babylon the Great, and pretty much everywhere else. Now, when you go into the Sikh images of the medieval times, it pretty much looks the same as the images in the Byzantine era. And, you can see, because obviously, again, in this particular time, I mean, as you can see here, the Jats came down in the medieval times. So during those times, when the Elamites were shut up into the Caucasus Mountains, living like a caveman, Jake was running around with the armory. He took hold of the buildings and the jewelry. And like we say, these Sikh people who, have similar images come from the Sindh area, which is the Siddhis. And, this is once upon a time when they were ruling. And this is what they look like. They had the turbans like the Sikhs, which is also what the Hebrews do. So, again, you can look up the 4 forgotten African kings that ruled India. And as you can see here, again, this is Jake. Again, this is that Sikh turban. And again, this one looks like Eddie Murphy's family member. And here's another image here, again, from these, so-called medieval days. And, as well as going over there, and you'll see images of Jake as a king, but you'll also see Jake as a slave. And if you notice here, this guy's more than likely of the Ashkenazi people. And as you can see here, Jake quite clearly doing the groundwork. And there's more images of, as we say, dark skin coloured slaves in India. Don't forget, in India they have a caste system, and it's pretty much based around skin colour. So the darker your skin colour, the lower your caste. And this goes back to Jake, or wherever Jake goes, he'll be the bottom of society. In this particular era of time, until the Lord comes back, we're always going to be the bottom of society. So because we originally had a darker skin tone, and what's left now in the spirit of these other nations, they can't always work out who's who. So in their spirit, they just automatically reject dark-skinned people, especially when you go to India. It's a big thing to reject dark-skinned people. But obviously, like I say, after generation and generation, these Israelite seeds have mingled in with the Elamite nations, then it's not so obvious. But obviously there are, like I say, with the Siddhis, there are still groups of people looking how they should. So when you, another thing I want to point out as well, you see, when you look at Sikh men here, when you look at this Sikh guy here, he doesn't look far off what a Rastafarian would look like. And, the big headdress and the beard and everything else. And, both of them are the seed of Jacob, but both of them are going off. And when you look at the surnames of the Sikhs, which is Singh, I mean, nowadays Sikhs really use that as a middle name. But as we can see here, Singh is a title, middle name or surname that means lion in various South Asian languages. So, it's not a coincidence that Jake's gone off into Sikhism, or he's gone off into Rastafarianism, and they're both talking about lions. And where did they get that from? They got that from the truth. But as usual, they've gone off with it. But like I say, it's within the spirit to do the same thing. So it's not a surprise when you find these similarities. And another similarity you will find here is when we look into the culture of the Punjab, which has many elements including music such as Bhangra, an extensive religious and non-religious dance tradition, a long history of poetry in the Punjabi language, a significant Punjabi film industry that dates back to before partition, a vast range of cuisine which has become widely popular abroad. So when you look at it, right, this is what they're into: music, dancing, poetry, film industry, and cuisine, food. This is pretty much the same thing as Jake in America, you know. In Babylon the Great, what they're trying to sell to Jake, because they know what Jake likes, they're trying to sell these things. They're trying to sell music and food and dancing, you know, poetry in the form of hip-hop. And the film industry, you know, Jake wants to be a movie star. So, you know, when you look at it, you got to just look at it through the spiritual eye, and you'll understand that Jake is of the same spirit wherever he is, wherever he goes. You know, it might be a different language and a different look and a different sound, but it's pretty much Jake in the mix. And another big clue as to, you know, Israelites, the seed of Jacob being spread out into India and needed to be told about this word to come back to this truth, is down to Thomas, the apostle. Okay, as we can see here, also called Didymus, was one of the 12 apostles of Yahushua, according to the New Testament. Thomas is commonly known as Doubting Thomas, because he doubted Yahushua's resurrection when first told of it, as related in the Gospel of John alone. Later he confessed his faith. So Thomas the Apostle, as we can see here, was born in Galilee, Roman province of Judea, Roman Empire. And, you know, he was an apostle, he was a preacher, and he was, you know, within the spirit. And he's gonna, so what does an apostle do? When they're in the spirit, they preach the word, and they keep doing it until the day they die, unless Yahweh Bahashim, Yahushua, removes the spirit off them. So, you know, nowhere in the scriptures does it say that the spirit got taken away from Thomas. So we assume that he kept on preaching and kept on doing the work of an apostle until the day he died. That's a big clue as to why they give him that title. And where did he die? He died in present-day India, AD 72. So what did he die in India for? He died in India because he was trying to wake up Jake. You know, not why he died in India while trying to wake up Jake. You know, you wouldn't go to India to wake up Elamites and tell them about your own nationality, because they're Elamites. What do they want to know about your nationality? He went there to wake up Jake, who were Israelites living in the land of India, living with their customs and their laws and their languages, and just totally going off, just like today. And as we can see here, according to traditional accounts of St. Thomas Christians of modern-day Kerala in India, Thomas is believed to have travelled outside the Roman Empire to preach the gospel, travelling as far as the Malabar coast, which is in modern-day Kerala state, India. And as we can see, here's an image of Thomas the Apostle. And so what that shows you is, you know, not only were Israelites taken over to India during the Atlantic slave trade, but they were obviously there from before, from the days of Thomas. So, you know, there's a history before the slave trade of Israelites being spread into India, which is what Thomas proves. And if you want to read about, you know, that account of doubting Thomas, you can go to John chapter 20. As we can see here, 20 and 29. Yahushua said unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed. So when we go back to this map of the slave trade routes that were used, as I mentioned earlier, it's quite clear to see the route between East Africa and India. Now, when you trace backwards, as we've been doing, we've traced the Punjabi people back to the Jats, back to the Sikhs, and back to Jacob. And the route that Jacob took was obviously via this slave trade route. So when you track back over to the east coast of Africa, you pretty much come up with a place called Kenya. And as you can see, this is the proximity of map A and map B in the right hand bottom corner. You can see Kenya and India. Now, the reason why there's a connection there is because obviously Jakes were taken from A to B. And that's why when you look into the Kenyan society, you will see Jake mixed in there as well. Again, the Sikh guy, same traditions mixed in with Jake. This is what we mean when we say the confusion of faith. I mean, both of these men, more than likely of the seed of Jacob, have the same spirit within them, of the same nationality of an Israelite, but they look completely different. Yet they share the same culture because they are of the same people. And as you can see here, this is not something you see every day. When you look around the world and you look in the media, they'll always tell you about Sikhs, but they never tell you about Sikhs from Kenya. And again, this is why, because they pretty much don't want you to know the truth. Now, again, I just want to point this out for, the people who grew up calling themselves Punjabi or Sikh or Indian and are now, listening to this word, listening to this truth and probably questioning and thinking, okay, am I really something of a different nationality? You're going to go off and you're going to do your own research. I mean, I haven't really done much research on this since I came to the truth, because obviously, like I say, I came in via a spiritual intervention, so there's no need to really go and check up what they're saying, obviously just as and when it's needed. But looking at this, I did spot a few things I want to point out to you guys. I typed in the history of Jews in India, and they pretty much gave you a list, 1 to 8 different groups. So when you're looking into it, I'm not going to go into every single one, but just to give you an example, you have to be quite careful when you're reading into it. So, for example, the Malabar component of the Koshin Jews, according to Shalva Whale, claim to have arrived in India together with the Hebrew King Solomon's merchants. The Koshin Jews settled in Kerala as traders. Okay, sounds promising, but let's read on. The fair complexioned component is of European Jewish descent, both Ashkenazi and Sephardi. So that's how so hang on a minute, we've got a problem here. So these guys are descending from the Ashkenazi people, which shows you they're not of the seed of Jacob. So chances are these are Jewish. I mean, if you look here, they interchange the word Jew and Jewish, Koshin Jews, and European Jewish. But, ultimately, if you're from Ashkenazi, then you're Jewish because you're acting like. And if you're from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then you're a Jew, which is what I've been told in that spiritual intervention. So you see, you've got to look out for this. And as we can see here, even below this, the Chennai Jews, on the third line, it says they were diamond business people and of Sephardi and Ashkenazi heritage. Okay, so in the 16th century. So, when the slave trade era was going on, what Hebrew Israelites from the seed of Jacob that were being carried around as slaves in the 16th century, how can they then come across as diamond business people? How does that make sense? And that shows you that these Ashkenazis are from the Jewish people who were buying and selling these slaves, because they were the ones with the money, and they were also the ones that are diamond business people. Okay, and on the flip side, when you go down here to number 8, just to give you the opposite example, it says here the small Telugu speaking group, the Ben Ephraim, meaning sons of Ephraim in Hebrew, also claim ancestry from Ephraim, one of the sons of Joseph and of the lost tribe of ancient Israel, also called Telugu Jews, their observance of modern Judaism dates back to 1981. Okay, so first of all, it doesn't tell you when these people arrived, so it must have been, it's not quite so clear. Obviously, it's must have been a lot longer ago, and than the Ashkenazi Jews. Now, what you have to ask yourself is, if it says here these Jews observe modern Judaism since 1981, so what were these Jews observing before that? They're Jews, and they were observing some sort of Jew tradition, before the Jewish people came along and introduced modern Judaism. And that shows you that these are Hebrews, that these are Jews, Hebrew Israelite Jews that probably were practicing. I mean, how much, to what level, I don't know. But, since 1981, they've started to observe modern Judaism, which means they're going off, which is what Jake is doing wherever he is. So, so these are probably more than likely original Jews. And now another thing you have to ask yourself, why did the Edomites, in the form of the Jewish people, assume the identity of the real children of Israel? Why did they do that? I've always thought it's quite a weird thing to do. It's quite a creepy thing to do, to look at someone and then watch how they, get on and do what they're doing, and then to copy them. It's okay when you're doing it in a sports field or you're learning something, fair enough, I get it. But to look at someone's culture and behaviour and then to want to copy them is quite a creepy thing, because really you should have your own culture. And then that leads you to ask yourself, well, why have these people taken on our identity? And the reason is because, over the earth, they've pushed many different philosophies, and they've all pushed different gods in order to make Jake go off in different ways. Sometimes you're not going to get all of Jake to go off on one particular thing, so you provide another option for Jake to go off, and the more options you provide for Jake to go off, the more likely Jake is to go off. And one of those options that the Edomites have provided for Jake to go off is to take Jake's nationality, apply it to themselves, and rebrand it in a wicked way. And that's what they've done. They've then gone back to India, bumped into these Jews, and got them to observe modern Judaism. This is the reason why they assumed our identity. So in certain parts where, Israelites held off from the rest of the world and held off from the philosophy of the rest of the world, held on to their true tradition, these Edomites had a plan to go in there for them guys. And they said, don't worry, we'll pretend to be them guys. And we'll go in there and we'll get them to observe it the way we want them to observe it. And then ultimately we got them going off. So there's your reason. So you have to go into yourself and do the research. But what I have done is, if we look at number 5 here, right at the bottom, another branch of the Ben Israel community resided in Karachi until the partition of India in 1947, when they fled to India. So you know what, the next bit's cut out, so I can't really see it. But as we see here, moved to Israel. The Jews from the Sindh, Punjab and Pathan areas are often incorrectly called Bani Jews, Israel Jews, sorry. So the people of the Sindh were the Jats, as I pointed out earlier, who are the Sikhs, who are actually Hebrew Israelites. But the thing is, you see, with the Sikhs, they're going off, just like Jake is always going off. So, as you can see here, Dharma is the son of compassion. Dharma is the son of compassion, the central belief of the Sikhs. Okay, but what does that remind you of? That just reminds you of Apis the bull, all going back to sun worship. I mean, we know that they take a lot of their traditions from the Hindus as well, which pretty much goes back to sun worship as well, which I've brought out before. So this is the reason why COVID is killing them off in Elam right now. These judgments and these curses are just hitting in a big way. I mean, also, don't forget, you've got Jake out there in big number is getting judged. And you've also got a lot of Elamites which are going heavy on this idol worship. You know, when you look at Jake over in Babylon the Great, he's more likely to worship the idols of the sports stars or the music stars, or self-idolatry. And when you go over to the East, you know, people in the West see the people in the East as a more spiritual people. That's because they don't do the self-idolatry so much. They literally idolize the statues of gold and, you know, whatever else of these 10,000 gods that they all seem to have. You know, everybody's got a god for something else. And this is why this judgment's coming in a big way. And you can see what's happening right now at the minute with this pandemic ripping through that country. And they're at the minute talking about India becoming the #1 place for, you know, worst hit place for this virus. And it's not a surprise. Like I said before, you just look at the consequences of disobedience and you will find Israelites. I mean, you know, when you look at some of their scriptures, they do have parts of the truth. You know, they show you these, they have talk about flying chariots. Obviously, they're going off because there's no such thing as elephants. You know, a two-headed elephant flying through the sky. But what you have to take note is that, you know, they do put if you look at the skin colour of these particular people, the ones in control are the dark skin. So, you know, they have, like I say, I don't want to go too deep into their culture and what they're about, because ultimately they're just going off. But they do have little bits of the truth scattered about, because you need the truth to make a lie. You know, if you don't have the truth, then you can't make a lie. But ultimately, Jake is going off. As we can see here, Ezra 9 and 7, since the days of our fathers have we been in great trespass unto this day, and for our iniquities have we, our kings and our priests, been delivered into the hand of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to the captivity, and to a spoil, and to a confusion of face, as it is this day. So that's what's going on, you know. These Hebrew Israelites out there have gone off and they've trespassed unto this day, which they're still doing to this day. A lot of them still won't repent. And for that, they've been delivered into the hands of the kings of the lands, to the sword, to the captivity, and to a spoil. And this confusion of face pretty much says it all. You know, when, like I say, you know, you can come to this truth and not look like your average Jake, and you're going to look at yourself in the mirror, you're going to be confused. You're going to say, well, is this real or not? I mean, there's a lot of Jakes out there that are confused. Like I say, there's a lot of people that say, call us black Hebrew Israelites. Well, those people are confused, you know. And this is what's going on. This confusion of face to this day is created by the scattering of the nation amongst the other nations. Just like India. So, you know, when you go there, it's going to be hard to spot Jake on face value. You have to look through the spirit and see how he gets on with things. But at the minute, they're struggling big time. And these are the curses and the judgments that are coming upon them. So what I want to point out as well, you know, with this whole pandemic thing going on over there at the minute, I was watching something the other day on the news, and I saw this Indian guy pretty much running around. You know, he jumped out of his car, he was running around, he had a gas canister in his hand, and he's just gasping for this bit of air for it to be filled up, and so he can just got in his car and he went off again. And it had me thinking, you know, these people are pretty much, they're suffocating, they're drowning, they're dying of lack of air while running around in air. They can't get enough oxygen, into their body. So they're trying to get these gas canisters so they can breathe pure oxygen just to give themselves a fighting chance. But oxygen is all around them in the air. And if I ever told you that, you know, people are going to die from lack of air while walking around in fresh air, you'd say, look, you couldn't make it up. But Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, has made that happen. people are drowning of air in air. And when you take that to another level, everything that has been done has to be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. So everything that's going on now is a repeat of everything that's occurred before. That's why it's so hectic at the minute on this earth. And don't forget, there was a flood. A flood came. So the effects of that flood have to be replayed out again on this earth in these end days. But there's no water and there's no flood. But it doesn't matter, because Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, has still got people drowning in fresh air. Okay? That's the terror of the Lord. And we can see here Daniel 9:7, O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces, as it is this day, to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries where thou hast driven them, because of their trespass that they have trespassed against thee. O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. Now, when we move over to South Asia, Africans, which again we know is code word for Israelites, the Edomites don't want to let it out too much. So, if we have a look into this particular area here, and we can see here now, movement of Africans to South Asia was fueled by the slave trade. An estimated 12.5 million Africans were moved across the Sahara, Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean to unfamiliar lands where they were rerouted. But this movement was over a millennium, from 900 AD to 1900 AD. Okay, the Indian Ocean slave trade was lubricated by socio-religious factors, benefits from the concubines, and each soldiers and servants were not entirely economic. And when you go into, South Asia, you will see Jake, just living there just like normal. But you have to sort of dig around a little bit and have a look. I mean, this one's quite clear. This is Jake. Jake's out there. And again, we go into that South Asian area, and this is pretty much Asia and the Pacific. This is what we're talking about. Jake's scattered all over the earth, right into every single last corner, even to this very tiny little piece down here. There's probably Jake's out there. Now, if you want to look more into it, there are, like I say, there's Jake's out there, even in China and Japan. And if you want to get more into it, you can look up Yusuke, who was a samurai of African origin. Again, African code word for Israelite, they don't want you to know. Who served as a retainer under the Japanese daimyo Oda Nobunaga. He arrived in Japan in 1579 in the service of, i.e. as a slave of, Italian Jesuit Christian missionary Alessandro such and such. So you can look up Yusuke yourself, and you will find the first so-called black, so-called African, aka Israelite samurai. And even if you were to look around Asia, you will find images of Jake's been everywhere, and he's been enslaved by every nation. As we can see here, it's quite clear here with this young girl with no shoes on, and this oriental looking person with looking quite comfortable. And don't forget Mark 13:27, and then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Okay, so don't worry. If you're part of the elect and you're understanding this truth and it resonates with you and you're growing in this spirit, then, Lord willing, you're part of that number to be delivered from the uttermost parts of earth. And I'll leave you with this one, Revelation 13:10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patient and the faith of the saints. So, you know, for guys like this, it's not looking good from here on in. And with that, I'll leave you till next time. Lord willing, you were edified. And all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Rakah, Kwadash. And until next time, Shalom.